I hope your English is better than my Swedish. Today we're talking about unicorn marketing, how to achieve unusually spectacular results across every different growth marketing channel in 2018 and beyond. And we're talking mostly about unicorns today, starting with my theory of unicorn marketing, followed by a discussion of the differences between donkeys and unicorns. We'll talk a little bit about donkey and unicorn detection. We'll introduce some new concepts around making unicorn babies and the unicorn alert. And just in case you thought you went to the wrong conference room, don't worry, we will be talking about some growth marketing hacks as well. Before getting into all the details of all the hacks, I just want to introduce myself briefly. My name is Larry Kim. I'm slightly obsessed with unicorns. I'm from Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's a very famous neighborhood. It's where Facebook was founded. It's where Microsoft was founded. It's also where I started my own business back in 2008. I was like a 28-year-old, internet marketing professional. I was working out of a bakery called Panera Bread because of the free Wi-Fi and unlimited Diet Coke refills. The company today is about 350 people. It's the world's largest pay-per-click management software company, managing $1 billion of ad spend for tens of thousands of clients worldwide. And recently, I started a new business in the Facebook chatbot marketing space. Just the last thing I'll say about myself is I'm married. I have a 3-year-old kid and another one in 2 months. So enough about me. Back to our story. We're talking about my crazy theory of unicorn marketing. And today, basically, my theory is that 98% of our marketing efforts go nowhere. And I think I know why that is. And I'm not criticizing. This is the case for me, too. So last year, I did 300 content campaigns. About 8 of them did extremely well, and about 292 went terribly. And so why is that? Why is it that 2% of my content does really well and 98% goes nowhere? I think usually when I ask experts, I kind of describe the situation to experts. They say, "Oh, Larry, you need to focus on quality," and I think that's a very unsatisfying answer because what exactly is quality? And then they'll tell me things like, oh, well, you have to have 1,200 words, or you need to have images, or et cetera, et cetera. Like there's a checklist of things that you need to have in order to be considered quality. But my problem with that definition is that all of my content I work very hard on, and it all satisfies all those checkboxes, yet still most of them go nowhere. And so I think there's more to it. I think there's something changing in the last 2 or so years, and basically my theory is that Google and Facebook's algorithms have been changing dramatically to sort of reward disproportionately unicorns and at the expense of donkeys. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So this is the top traffic to the top posts of Inc. magazine. It's a popular American entrepreneurship website. And if you look at the green line from August of 2015, you'll see that the top 10 posts received kind of more or less the same amount of traffic. If you go to 2016, the same month, it starts to become more exponential, and then in August of 2017, the top 2 posts got more traffic than all the other posts combined. And so I think what we need to do here is we need a new strategy for content marketing. I think it's about time we start kind of redefining our conventional notions of content quality to be more aligned with how the algorithms of Facebook and Google are defining and rewarding quality content. So this brings me to part 2 of our discussion today, which is a discussion on the differences between donkeys and unicorns. So I've been describing donkeys and unicorns, but let's kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail. The difference between a donkey and the unicorn is it's both relative and cross-channel. So what I mean by relative is that when you think about, say, social media status updates on Facebook, so this is 129 status updates for a typical Facebook company page, and what you can see is most of it is crap. So most of the click-through rates for those 129 status updates are between 0 and 1, or 1 and 2, or 2 or 3%. However, on the other side, you have these outliers that are doing not just a little bit better, but are doing 3, 4, or 5 times better. So those are the outliers with 10% click-through rates. Those are your unicorns. So that's what I mean by it's a relative definition. What we're looking for is the unusually great performers. We see this across channels. It's not just social media. In blogging, for example, it's generally the case that 10% of your content will produce 50, 60, or even 70% of the results. And so when I'm describing unicorn content to marketers, a lot of times they think I'm crazy because they think I'm trying to advocate for going for viral hits. So viral hits is something completely different. That's like Gangnam Style that got 2 billion views. That's impossible to do. That is extremely difficult to do. What I'm describing is just focusing on your unicorns, the top 3% of your own content. By definition, every one of you has a unicorn because no matter how crappy your content is, there's going to be 3% of content that's going to be less crappy than everything else. Let's talk a little bit about finding the unicorns amongst the donkeys. How do you discern which are the unicorns and which are the donkeys? It has a lot to do with click-through rates. So think about all the different channels, like online advertising, like AdWords. AdWords has always been about click-through rates, which is then normalized into quality score. If you have a high click-through rate on your search ads, you get really great ad prices. If you have a low click-through rate on your ads, you have 400% tax. Facebook and Twitter ads copied that idea. They have the same concept where if you have a promoted post with 1% click-through rate, well, then those clicks are going to be $3, $4, or $5 per click. But if you have a promoted post with 10 or 20 or 30% click-through rates, those costs go down to 10 cents, 5 cents, or even 1 penny. It's not just about social and ads. It's also about organic search, so Google organic search. Recently, it's always been about links and keywords, but more recently, click-through rate has become a very important signal in Google's algorithms. I was tracking 1,000 keywords over the last few years, kind of just taking pictures of the same keywords and just looking at their rankings. And what I noticed was the keywords that have above expected, above average click-through rates were being promoted to higher positions in the search results page. Meanwhile, the listings with lower than expected click-through rates for their positions were falling to the bottom of the page. Also, organic social, obviously, there's been big changes to the Facebook Newsfeed algorithm. Every time you see a post on your Facebook Newsfeed, Facebook is actually auditioning that content to you to see if it's interesting to you. If you engage with it, you're more likely to see content from that publisher or this type of content in the future. And if you don't engage with it, well, then you're less likely to see that kind of stuff. And so, of course, click-through rate matters. What I mean by cross-channel, I really mean it's across every channel. So think about like email marketing. Of course, click-through rate matters for email marketing. Otherwise, they won't open your emails. But over the last 2 years, the platforms have rolled out additional spam filtering triggers by engagement rates. So the clutter box in Outlook, the promotions tab in Gmail, all of these are additional traps that you must overcome, and the only way to get through these is unusually high click-through rates. Also, conversion rates. It's not just about whether or not people see your content. Obviously, we want to sell stuff. We want the people to buy the products that we're selling. And so what we've observed is that the higher the click-through rate, the higher the conversion rate. Because if you can get people excited to visit your site, that excitement carries through to a purchase or a sign-up. And so when it comes to the difference between the donkeys and the unicorns, the main differentiating factor isn't the number of words. It isn't like the number of images. It has everything to do with the engagement rate of the content that you're auditioning. And so the idea here is that the reason why there's that commonality is because all of the platforms leverage machine learning algorithms that define quality along similar terms, like are people engaging with this stuff or not, and then are then rewarding dramatically those pieces of content with extremely high exposure within those platforms. So we're at part 3 of our discussion today. I want to talk a little bit about donkeys versus unicorns and how to detect them. The problem here is that 9 out of 10 marketers suffer from donkey delusional syndrome, and it's a terrible disorder. It means we think our crap doesn't stink, and basically we think that everything that we work on is a unicorn, even though it might have been like a triceratops or a mosquito or some other creature that we thought was a unicorn, but was actually a rhinoceros. And basically what I've created here today is a really easy to use tool that you can use in your marketing teams. It's a donkey detector, and the donkey detector is basically a pyramid scheme team for auditioning and testing to see what is the unicorn and what is the donkey. So it's a 4-step process. Step 1, we're going to have to create and audition a lot of different campaigns. Step 2, we're going to measure those engagement rates for those campaigns. Step 3, you need to kill the donkeys. So the biggest mistake that people make is they just keep investing more time and effort on the donkeys, hoping that it'll become a unicorn. But that never happens. The donkey will never turn into a unicorn. What you should be doing instead is just moving on, trying to find a unicorn, and when you do find the unicorn, sounding the unicorn alert. Let me give you a couple examples of this. These are different types of email subject lines with different topics. We should be focusing on the ones with 2 or 3 or 4 times higher open rates and expanding around those types of topics. Similarly, with conversion rates, we find that the average conversion rate is around 2% on the internet, but the top 10% of offers convert at 5 times better conversion rates. So all you really need is, you don't need 100 different offers on your website, you just need one. And when you do find it, just focus on that one thing. It's always been the case that a lot of the value comes from a small amount of your marketing work, but what's happening is that virality is becoming more viral, and increasingly, 80, 85, 90% of the value of your marketing campaigns is coming from like 5% of the work being done. And so we're at part 4 here. I want to talk about 2 important concepts: the unicorn alert and making a unicorn babies. Don't worry if you haven't heard of these before, I just made them up. Remember how there were 8 stories out of my 300 stories of last year that did very well. So I had 8 unicorns last year. This was one of my unicorns. It was 5 big changes coming to AdWords, everything you need to know. So typically, my stories might get like 100 or 500 shares. This was getting tens of thousands of shares and hundreds of thousands of views, which is unusual for like these niche topics. And so the problem, what marketers do is when they get these spectacular results, they just congratulate themselves and they look at the marketing calendar and say, okay, what's next? Let's move on to the next topic. And that's the worst thing you can do. What you need to do is get off of the content treadmill and just take a moment to really extract more value from the unicorn that you've found by sounding the unicorn alert. So the unicorn alert just is simply saying, like, everyone in the marketing team, we have this really remarkable campaign. Let's make some unicorn babies. So what's a unicorn baby? A unicorn baby is just, for example, a contributed article on the exact same topic. For example, I knew that because this was such a hot topic, that if I could just turn it into a contributed post on Search Engine Journal, that contributed article would do extremely well. And of course, another form of unicorn baby is just exploring the topic in greater depth. So it was 5 different features that are new to AdWords. Why don't I create 5 follow-up stories, 1 for each feature? And of course, each one of those 5 unicorn babies generated hundreds of thousands of views because it was related to the original hot topic. Another idea is to do infographification and videoification of unicorns. I love video and infographic content. I guess the problem is that it takes so much time and money to create this stuff, and I get really annoyed when those efforts go nowhere. And so what I do is I de-risk the video and infographic process by only doing topics that have already proven themselves in a cheaper medium. Let me give you an example of this. This was the #2 article on Search Engine Land last year. It was just an infographic that I made, and I knew that it was going to do very well because it was just a visual representation of an extremely hot article that I had created on my blog earlier. Even conference presentations and webinars. So when I found the unicorn, I told my marketing team, we need to turn this into a webinar to generate registrations. And so they set up the landing page and we sent out the invitations. We just kept the same title. We didn't change anything. And we sent out the invitation. We got 5,000 registrations. That's almost 9 times more than average. And now the mistake people might do is they might congratulate themselves and go home, but I told my marketing team, we're doing this again tomorrow. And they thought I was crazy. Like, don't you want to change the topic a little bit? I'm like, no. By the way, the reason why we got 5,000 registrations is because GoToWebinar has a limit of 5,000. So we actually broke GoToWebinar. So we just did the same thing again. I didn't want to change it because I knew it was working. So I just wanted to see how much more there was. And we got another 5,000 registrations. And then we made small tweaks, small changes, unicorn babies, to that original idea. And we did this whole thing 5 times. And it generated 71% of the registrations for all the webinars in 2017 combined. And so it's not just about getting substantially more results, it's also about minimizing work, because I could have done a different webinar and spent another week producing new content, but it's just not, it's 98% chance it's going to go nowhere. So one of the most important things that you need to do here is you need to boost your unicorns with social media spending on pay-per-click advertising. So for example, we know that if you promote content on Facebook that has high engagement rates, you can get the cost per clicks down to 1 penny per click. That's much better than $3. On Twitter, you can get the cost down to 3, 4, 5, 6 cents per click. It's a little bit like this game called Battleship. It's very old. The goal of this game is to sink the other guy's battleships. And for some reason, there's no drones and no radar and no GPS and no radar guidance, satellite guidance. You have no idea where the boats are, and you just have to take a lot of shots. But when you do get an impact, you know that there's a battleship in that vicinity, so you focus all of your firepower and efforts in that general vicinity. Guys, here's the truth. Content marketing is a little bit more of a numbers game than you might realize. I'm always surprised at what content of mine does extremely well and which content that I've spent so much time and effort on goes nowhere. Guys, I just wanted to wrap up today's presentation with a little bit of discussion on my top 5 kind of growth marketing hacks of 2018. Hopefully I've convinced you that click-through rate matters a great deal for the success or failure of your marketing campaigns. I want to talk a little bit about the Russian Facebook ad targeting method. Okay, so basically a few months ago I created as an experiment a fake news website. This is a completely fake news website. It's Citizens News Network. The logo is like a backwards CNN logo. It's ridiculous. So I just copied and pasted some dumb articles as an experiment. I promoted the content on Facebook just to see what would happen, and it was crazy. It was like within minutes, thousands of people were like commenting and clicking and sharing and then liking the content. And so what the Russians discovered is simply that there's this notion of cognitive dissonance. This is like a bias. People are really predisposed towards sharing content that agrees with their worldviews. So I'm not suggesting that you need to create fake news, but what I am suggesting is that if you can come up with campaigns that sort of reinforce a customer's previously, pre-existing biases, those are the types of content that does fantastically well in terms of click-through rates. I want to talk about my number 4 hack, which is the inverted unicorn ad targeting method. Typically in Facebook advertising, what you do is you cast a very narrow net. The idea is to target a very specific narrow audience by going after certain demographics, behaviors, and interests, and trying to find just the right person for your content. So for example, if you're selling email marketing, you might go after people who like email marketing, as well as having a marketing job titles. So that's very typical. A different way of doing this would be to use the inverted unicorn technique, which says to go after 2 completely unrelated topics. So for example, targeting people who like email marketing and Game of Thrones. So this might sound a little crazy, because what do Game of Thrones has to do with email marketing? And they are completely uncorrelated and have nothing to do with each other. But the reason why this is such a brilliant technique is because it allows you to create ad experiences that appeal to not just one of a user's interests, but actually 2 or 3 or 4 or more of their interests, compelling them to click on this stuff. If you don't understand why that's funny, that's the beauty of this thing, because you would never see this ad in the first place. And basically what we find is that this generates remarkably high click-through rates and extremely low cost per clicks. I want to talk about a different hack, which has to do with the use of Facebook Messenger. And so the problem with email marketing and Facebook Newsfeed is that the engagement rates and the open rates are extremely low these days. Like these are 10 and 20 years old technologies, and the open rates are like 5 to 10%, or the newsfeed visibility for organic reach is typically around 0 to 1%. Facebook Messenger, on the other hand, has 70 or 80% open rates, often within the first 60 minutes. And so like you can do chat blasts. So I blasted Neil Patel, one of my blog posts, and he actually read it. I can tell because his little face is at the bottom there. So this is actually kind of the software that I'm working on, my new startup, Mobile Monkey. It's a chat blaster. But basically, you can blast people. Anyone who messages your page, they're opting in for giving you the permission to message them back. And basically what Facebook does is they send you the contact information of everybody who engages with your page. And so you can then just blast them back with whatever content that you want. And you still have to honor their unsubscribes, et cetera, but that's kind of the idea. So just like how in the olden days, we were trying to accumulate lists of emails or getting people to like our page so that they would see our content, I think kind of a new way of doing this is just getting people to message your page so that you can build a big address book so that you can actually talk to them. And so there's a couple of really neat ways to get more contacts in Messenger. One of them is to put your chat functionality on your site so that they start chatting you that way. Another one is a checkbox plugin. So this is where you just have them opt into receiving messages from you via any pre-existing web sign-up forms on your website. Another really great one is Facebook Send to Messenger ads. This is where instead of buying clicks to your site, which I think is a total waste of money because it's typically $2 or $3 a click with a 2 or 3% conversion rate. Instead, you can send them to a Messenger session, and then Facebook will send you their contact information and give you the rights to message them back, regardless of whether or not they provide you with that information. Guys, I want to talk about my number 2 hack, which is a budgeting hack, and this is the Unicorn Slush Fund. The Unicorn Slush Fund is just an optimization of the concept of a monthly PPC marketing budget. So the monthly PPC marketing budget says, like, you have $1,000 a month to spend, and say you do 10 posts in the month, you want to evenly divide the budget at $100 per post. That is a really ridiculous idea because we know that 98% of the stuff goes nowhere. What you should have is, instead of a PPC budget, you should have a slush fund. A slush fund that says, like, you don't have to spend anything in a month, but you can accumulate and roll over those budgets, January, February, March, April. If you don't find a unicorn until May, we can then deploy all of the previous month's budgets, to promote this one campaign that's doing spectacularly well. And that's how you generate, 40 times more value out of your marketing efforts. Guys, my last hack for today is a branding hack. If you thought the other stuff was powerful, this is the number 1 hack for doubling or tripling your click-through rates. And basically, we did some research to see what the difference is between new and repeat visitors. New visitors are people who have low brand affinity with you and your business. Repeat visitors are people who have higher brand affinity with you and your business. There's a massive difference. The people who have heard of you before are 2 to 3 times more likely to click on your stuff. They're also 2 to 3 times more likely to buy your stuff, because people don't just buy things randomly. They go with the brands that they know and trust. And also remember that higher click-through rates mean substantially lower cost per click. So if you multiply these things through, brand affinity has a 10 times uplift on these campaigns. And so the hack here is, if you're just waiting to the very last moment to kind of get in front of these people and hoping for them to buy your stuff, you've already lost, because they're going to go with the stuff that they've heard of before. So the hack is to get in front of your target audience long before they enter the market for your products and services by creating and promoting content that's outside of your niche. So the way that you do this is you just find you do audience analytics to figure out what are the interests of your customers other than the products and services that you're selling. You can get this data from Google Analytics People Explorer. You can get this from Facebook Audience Insights. You can get this from Twitter Analytics. And so, for example, here in this screen, it shows that 70% of my followers on Twitter are really interested in entrepreneurship. And so what I do is I take 20% of my resources and time to produce content that has nothing to do with chatbots and has nothing to do with AdWords software. It's just like, the ugly truth about being an entrepreneur. The reason why I do this is because I'm just trying to connect with my audience and build brand affinity prior to them entering the purchasing funnel. So that's exactly how marketing works. I'm just trying to promote inspirational, memorable content to the target audience so that they form biases, positive biases towards me and my brand, so that later when the need arises, they will buy directly from me and I will win. So those are my top growth marketing hacks for the year. The slides will be available. I just wanted to summarize, what does it all mean? Thank you so much, everyone, today. We've been on an epic journey from donkey land to unicorn land. It was a 5-step journey, starting with optimizing for engagement, auditioning tons and tons of different campaigns, finding the unicorns, killing the donkeys, and then sounding the unicorn alert and making unicorn babies. Thank you, everyone. Be a unicorn in a sea of donkeys. Have a great morning.
Thank you, Larry. I'm also a big fan of unicorns, so yeah. Just checking, is there a question for Larry, maybe?
That's one question here about the change in the Facebook algorithm when it comes to promote more stories from friends rather than brands. Will Facebook still be relevant as a brand channel in the long run?
I think that has yet to be seen.
Yeah.
It's very unknown.
It's unknown,
Yeah.
like often with Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still spending money on ads, and the business is doing so well, but I don't know.
We'll just try to do it as long as it works, right?
Yeah, and then you just move on to the next channel.
But I was wondering, when does a unicorn become a donkey again? Because that happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But so that story of the top features of the year, I did 5 webinars, and it started to exhibit performance that was similar to my average webinars. So these things burn themselves out over time, but what you can do is you can resurrect your unicorns. So I can just do the same title, but for 2018. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the top, features of AdWords for 2018, and just copy the same formula, and it should work because it worked in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Great, Larry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.